This is the story of Lebanon, a nation once known to be the Switzerland of the Middle East, but was destroyed by corruption and mismanagement by its ruling population. Now it is known for one particular thing, an unending financial crisis. In 2023, the story remained the same as the country continues to endure severe economic depression, one of the worst the world has ever seen, not in recent times, but since the 1850s. The misfortune all started in 2019 and only got worse with the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic and the port of Beirut explosion. Now, the financial crisis in Lebanon easily ranks amongst the top 10 and possibly top 3 most severe episodes of crises in the whole world. Before we begin, make sure to click the like and subscribe buttons to stay updated with the latest videos. Which brings us to how it all started. It is easy for the Lebanese government to claim that the COVID-19 pandemic, alongside the port of Beirut explosion, are responsible for its financial state. But analyses from international institutions like the World Bank have proven otherwise. Lebanon's depression was no doubt caused by the country's elite, who had for the longest time captured the state and lived off its economic rents, without considering the country's long-term stability and, in fact, social peace. The massive debt incurred by the rulers, as well as the unsustainable financial methods they used, worked to lead the country down the lonely road to an unparalleled financial crisis, cutting down Lebanon's gross domestic product by over 50%. Surely, the Lebanese people have not had it easy. Judging from the fact that the country is already one of the most unequal countries, yet millions more have been pushed into poverty. In fact, the World Bank expects those below the poverty line to have risen by as much as 30% by the end of 2023. Also, since the economy collapsed in 2019, bank owners went ahead to freeze people's accounts instead of assuming the losses themselves. Since then, most citizens have been unable to access their life savings. This has forced many of them to turn desperate enough to take it by force. Several people have staged sit-ins to demand their money, which of course is needed to pay for necessities. Others have used real or toy guns to demand their money from the bank, and the majority of those in this category have been successful. This has to be one of the very few cases, if not the only case, where bank robbers were considered good citizens and national heroes, as the population hailed and cheered following the news. This is because, well, the banks in Lebanon are viewed as a corrupt cartel. The financial situation in the country is so severe that the Lebanese pound has lost up to 95% of its value since 2019. Also, the country's GDP went from $55 billion in 2018 to $20.50 billion in 2021, a significant decline that is only seen during times of war. This is why it is no surprise that the country wallows in extreme poverty. 80% of its people, which is about 5.5 million people in total, are living below the poverty line. People can hardly afford basic necessities, with more than half of families with at least one child skipping meals daily. It is also rather shocking when UNICEF carried out a survey. It showed that 12% of children are working to help their families. Also, one would think that because of the devastating situation, the country would not have any refugees, seeing that citizens themselves live the pathetic lives of refugees in their own country. But surprisingly, Lebanon's 6.8 million population also includes 1.5 million Syrian refugees. This only makes us wonder at the dire circumstances these refugees are facing. The situation has forced many citizens to leave the country in an attempt to escape the hell that is the normal state in the country. In 2019, nearly 67,000 citizens left the country. In 2020, 17,700 Lebanese emigrants were recorded, and in 2021, that number grew to 79,100, an increase of nearly 350%. Since then, emigration rates have only been record high. Meanwhile, majority of the people are unable to secure their social and economic rights. Even though the level of poverty and food insecurity in Lebanon is alarming, the authorities are failing to ensure the people's right to adequate standard of living, including the right to food. In this case, universal social protection, which guarantees the right to social security for everyone in the country, could help absorb economic shocks and ensure an adequate standard of living. But unfortunately, the social protection system in Lebanon is highly fragmented, leaving most informal workers, older people, and children without any protection, and reinforcing social and economic inequalities. Despite having a mountain-high level of debt, equivalent to 150% of national output, one of the world's highest burdens, in April 2022, the Lebanese government attempted to borrow some more. So they reached an agreement with the International Monetary Fund for a $3 billion loan that was dependent on certain reforms by the government before it could be approved. The reforms included restoring the viability of banks, reforming state-owned enterprises, and strengthening anti-corruption and anti-money laundering frameworks. But in September 2022, the IMF said the reforms had been very slow and Lebanon was still in paralysis due to political divisions. Huge debts is one of the factors that has destroyed the Lebanese economy. But for that to have happened, it must have borrowed so much. Some economists have described Lebanon's financial system as a nationally regulated Ponzi scheme, where new money is borrowed to pay existing creditors. It works until fresh money runs out. But how did the nation of about 6 million people get there? After the Civil War, Lebanon balanced its books with tourism receipts, foreign aid, earnings from its financial industry, and the largesse of Gulf Arab states, which bankrolled the state by boosting central bank reserves. Yet one of its most reliable sources of dollars was remittances from the millions of Lebanese who went abroad to find work. Even in the 2008 global financial crash, they still sent cash home. But unfortunately, remittances started slowing from 2011 as Lebanon's fixed stance led to more political sclerosis and much of the Middle East, including neighboring Syria, descended into chaos. The country started having budget deficits, and the balance of payments sank deeper into the red as transfers failed to match imports of everything from staple foods to flashy cars. This continued until 2016, when banks decided to step in. They began offering huge interest rates for new deposits of dollars, more than anywhere else in the world, and even more extraordinary rates for Lebanese pound deposits. Dollars flowed again, and surprisingly, the banks could keep funding the spending binge. But how could the banks offer such high returns? Well, at the time, Lebanon was still politically dysfunctional and was without a president for most of 2016, but the central bank, led by former Merrill Lynch banker Riyad Salameh, introduced financial engineering, a range of mechanisms that amounted to offering banks lavish returns for new dollars. Improved dollar flows showed up in climbing foreign reserves, but what was less obvious and is now a point of contention was the rising liabilities. Soon enough, the central bank's assets were swept away by what it owed. What triggered the collapse, you may wonder? Well, the 2018 election was fast approaching, hence the need to reap followers. So politicians decided to entice the people by jumping on a public sector pay rise. Unfortunately, the government failed to deliver reforms, making foreign donors hold back the billions of dollars they had pledged. The final spark was in October 2019, when the government made plans to tax WhatsApp calls. With a big diaspora and Lebanon's low tax regime skewed in favor of the rich, slapping a fee on the way many Lebanese kept in touch with relatives was disastrous. Mass protests, driven by a frustrated youth demanding change, erupted, and soon foreign exchange inflows dried up and dollars exited Lebanon. Banks no longer had enough dollars to pay depositors queuing outside, so they shut their doors. The currency collapsed, sliding from 1,500 to the dollar back in 2019 to the current tens of thousands. Then the Beirut explosion, which killed about 190 people, happened, destroying billions of dollars, further sinking the economy. This is why it is good news that more than ever, the Lebanese people and their government seek a way forward. So, to help, France is currently leading international efforts to see Lebanon tackle corruption and implement other reforms demanded by donors. Crucially, Lebanon needs to form a new government so it can resume stalled talks with the International Monetary Fund. But to make this effective, politicians and bankers need to agree on the scale of the vast losses and on what went wrong, so Lebanon can shift direction and stop living beyond its means. Lebanon is currently living in its worst, and we can only hope the ongoing reforms make a difference. To follow through on this, please subscribe to this channel. Also, do like this video if you haven't. See you soon!